Have you ever noticed that the moment you finally stop, the guilt begins? You spend the entire week feeling exhausted. You tell yourself that all you need is a chance to rest. But when that moment finally arrives, relaxing feels strangely difficult. You wake up with nothing planned. Nobody expects anything from you. There is no urgent email to answer, no task that absolutely has to be completed, no responsibility demanding your attention. And instead of feeling relaxed, you feel uncomfortable. A strange tension begins to appear. Maybe you start thinking about all the things you should be doing. Maybe you feel lazy. Maybe you find yourself reaching for your phone, checking messages, making lists, cleaning something that doesn't need cleaning, or looking for a way to feel productive again. You tell yourself that once everything is finished, then you'll rest. But somehow, everything is never finished. And deep down, you know this isn't really about having too much to do, because even when there is nothing to do, the discomfort remains. For many people, rest is not peaceful. It feels unsafe, and that realization can be confusing. After all, why would something as natural as resting create guilt, anxiety, or tension? Shouldn't rest feel good? Shouldn't it feel relieving? The answer is that for some people, rest is not just rest. Rest becomes a confrontation. The moment life becomes quiet, thoughts that were buried under productivity begin to surface. Emotions that were pushed aside begin to make themselves known. And suddenly, being alone with yourself feels much harder than staying busy. Most people assume they have a productivity problem, but often they have something much deeper. A nervous system that has learned to associate worth with doing. A mind that believes slowing down is dangerous. An inner voice that quietly whispers that resting means falling behind. In this video, we're going to explore why so many people feel guilty when they rest, where this guilt often comes from, and why learning to rest without shame may be one of the most important psychological skills you will ever develop. One of the biggest misconceptions about guilt and rest is that people assume it comes from the present moment. They think the problem is that they have too much work to do, too many responsibilities, too many unfinished tasks. But if that were true, the guilt would disappear whenever the workload disappeared. And for many people, it doesn't. Even during a vacation, they feel restless. Even on a free weekend, they feel uneasy. Even after completing everything on their to-do list, they struggle to relax. Which means the guilt is coming from somewhere else. For many people, their sense of worth slowly became tied to what they do rather than who they are. Somewhere along the way, they learned that being productive feels good. Being useful feels good. Being needed feels good. And over time, these experiences create a powerful psychological pattern. Without even realizing it, you begin to measure your value through achievement. You feel good when you accomplish something. You feel relieved when someone appreciates your effort. You feel secure when you are helping, solving, fixing, organizing, producing, or taking care of others. The problem is that eventually your brain starts making a dangerous connection. Doing becomes associated with worth. Productivity becomes associated with safety. And rest begins to feel like the opposite. This is why some people can spend an entire day working and still feel like they haven't done enough. No amount of productivity ever fully satisfies them. Because the real need underneath is not accomplishment, it's reassurance. It's the need to feel valuable. It's the need to feel enough. And when your sense of value depends on what you do, rest can start to feel surprisingly threatening. Because in moments of stillness, there are no achievements to hide behind, no tasks to complete, no problems to solve, no proof that you are being useful. Just you. And for many people, that can feel deeply uncomfortable. Not because they are lazy, not because they lack discipline, but because they have spent years teaching themselves that their worth must be earned. For many people, this pattern doesn't begin in adulthood. It begins much earlier. As children, we are constantly learning lessons about ourselves and our place in the world. Not through words alone, but through experiences. Some children grow up feeling that they are loved simply because they exist. Others learn something very different. They learn that being good earns approval. Being helpful earns praise. Being responsible earns recognition. Being easy, quiet, mature, successful, or self-sufficient earns acceptance. And while there is nothing wrong with these qualities, problems arise when a child begins to believe that love, attention, or safety must be earned through performance. Perhaps you were the responsible one, the child who never caused problems, the one who looked after everyone else, the one who learned to put their own needs aside. Or perhaps you became the achiever, the child who received praise for success, good grades, hard work, or always doing the right thing. Over time, these experiences can create a silent belief that follows you into adulthood. A belief that says, I matter when I am useful. I deserve love when I perform. I am valuable when I contribute. The tragedy is that these beliefs often become so familiar that we stop noticing them. They simply feel like reality. And this is why rest becomes difficult. Because when you stop doing, that old belief suddenly becomes activated. If your value comes from being useful, what happens when you're not being useful? If your identity is built around helping others, who are you when you're doing nothing? If you have spent your entire life earning your place through effort, how do you simply allow yourself to exist without proving anything? These questions are rarely conscious. Most people don't sit down and think about them directly. Instead, they experience them as guilt, restlessness, anxiety, the urge to get up and do something. Anything. Because staying still means coming face to face with a possibility that feels frightening. What if I am only worthy when I am productive? And for many sensitive people, this fear operates quietly beneath the surface for years without ever being fully understood. There is another reason why rest can feel so uncomfortable. And it has very little to do with motivation, discipline, or mindset. It has to do with your nervous system. Most people assume that exhaustion automatically leads to relaxation. But that isn't always how the human body works. In fact, many people spend so much of their lives in a state of stress, alertness, responsibility, and constant activity that their nervous system begins to treat this state as normal. Being busy becomes familiar. Being needed becomes familiar. Being under pressure becomes familiar, even if it is exhausting. And over time, familiarity starts to feel safe. This creates a strange paradox. The very thing that is draining you can also become the thing that feels most comfortable. Because your nervous system knows how to operate there. It knows how to be vigilant. It knows how to anticipate problems. It knows how to stay prepared. But it may not know how to simply be at rest. This is why some people become anxious the moment life slows down. Not because something is wrong, but because nothing is happening. And that unfamiliar quietness can feel deeply unsettling. You finally sit down on the couch. You have nowhere to be. Nothing urgent to do. And instead of feeling peaceful, your mind suddenly becomes louder. You start thinking about the future, the past. Things you forgot to do, conversations you had earlier, problems that don't even exist yet. The nervous system begins searching for something to focus on because it has become accustomed to constant stimulation. In a strange way, busyness has become a coping strategy. As long as you are moving, planning, helping, fixing, or achieving, you don't have to fully sit with yourself. You don't have to feel the exhaustion beneath the productivity. You don't have to notice the loneliness beneath the busyness. You don't have to confront the emotions that have been waiting patiently underneath all the activity. And so rest becomes uncomfortable, not because rest is dangerous, but because rest removes distractions. It creates space. And in that space, you finally begin to hear what your mind and body have been trying to tell you all along. This is why learning to rest is not simply about doing less. It is about learning how to feel safe when nothing needs to be done. And for many people, that can take time. Because they are not just learning to rest. They are teaching their nervous system that stillness is no longer a threat. If you recognize yourself in this struggle, there is something important you need to understand. The guilt you feel when you rest is not proof that you are lazy. It is not proof that you are wasting your time. And it is certainly not proof that you are falling behind in life. More often than not, it is the echo of an old survival strategy. A strategy that once helped you feel accepted, safe, valuable, needed. But what protected you in the past may be exhausting you in the present. Because there comes a point where constantly proving your worth becomes a burden that no amount of achievement can lift. There will always be another task, another responsibility, another goal. Another reason why now doesn't feel like the right time to rest. If you keep waiting until everything is finished before allowing yourself to relax, you may end up waiting your entire life. The truth is that your worth was never meant to be something you earn. It was never supposed to depend on how productive you are, how much you accomplish, or how useful you are to other people. Your value does not disappear when you sit down. It does not disappear when you take a break. It does not disappear when you choose yourself for a moment. And perhaps that is the deeper lesson hidden beneath the guilt. Rest is not something you have to deserve. Rest is something you need. Not because you have worked hard enough, not because you have finally earned it, but because you are human. Learning to rest without guilt is not about becoming less responsible. It is about remembering that your life is worth more than your productivity. And maybe the next time that familiar guilt appears when you slow down, instead of immediately obeying it, you can pause for a moment and ask yourself a different question. What if this feeling is not a sign that I should do more? What if it is a sign that I have been carrying too much for far too long? And what if the bravest thing I can do right now is not to keep pushing forward, but to finally allow myself to rest?